Parsha Behaalotcha, from the writings of Binyamin Zeev Kahane. In the Parsha Behaalotcha, we are witness to a unique event, the choosing of the leaders. The Torah even lets us in on which factors played a part in how these Jewish leaders were chosen. In chapter 11 of our Parsha, Moshe reaches his breaking point. I can't carry the burden of this people alone, for it is too heavy for me. And asks God to find people who can share the burden of leadership with him. How does God pick these leaders? After all, there are no shortage of righteous and talented Jews around. God immediately singles out a specific group from which the next Jewish leadership will be chosen. Gather me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of the people and officers over them. Rashi explains, those whom you recognize who were appointed over them as officers in Egypt during the rigorous labor. And they, the officers, had pity on them, the Israelites, and were smitten because of them. I'll just digress for a second here. What happened was the officers stuck up for the Israelites when they had to make bricks without straw, then the Israelites couldn't achieve the quota, and these officers were beaten because of it. Though this may appear a rather surprising choice, a deeper probe into the matter will reveal to us a tremendous lesson so pertinent for today. Who in the world were these Jewish police officers? In the book of Shemot, chapter 5, Paro lays down a rather heavy, if not impossible, edict on his Jewish slaves. They must produce a specific quota of bricks, even without giving straw. The Jewish officers were ordered by the Egyptian taskmasters to oversee that this quota was met. If not, the officers would be blamed for it and be beaten. Thus, they were in a dilemma. Either they turn over their brothers by doing so to save their own skin, or they can refuse the orders and be severely punished for it. In short, these officers were supposed to be the Jewish capos. But these policemen, unlike others who have been placed in similar situations in our sad history, refused to bear down on their already suffering brethren. And they did not hand over the names of the Jews who could not meet the quota. The result? The Egyptian taskmasters thrashed the refusing policemen instead of the Jewish slaves. And the officers of the children of Israel, whom Paro, taskmasters, had set over them, were beaten. And this is chapter 5, verse 14. And this is the book of Numbers. If we think of this seriously and not relate it to like some fairy tale we hear in kindergarten, we would get goosebumps all over contemplating such heroism. What can be a more inspiring description of Ahavat Yisrael, the caring for a fellow Jew, by someone in authority? Not only didn't they exploit the power, but these officers understood that sometimes they must bear the suffering of their brothers. This is what God saw, and he did not forget the minutiae there was in the need for leadership. He knew to whom God did not seek out of people with charisma, nor did he pick talented organizers, or even Torah scholars. One thing, Ahavat Yisrael, which is the love of a fellow Jew. The centrality of this attribute cannot be disputed. Two of the greatest Jewish leaders in our history, Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech, were former shepherds. The sages teach us that God tested them via ability to care for their flock and show mercy on those who are responsible, they are responsible over. Here we must stress a key point. Today, everyone speaks of Ahavat Yisrael, but too often it is merely a slogan. When selecting the leaders, God did not choose those who make nice speeches about Ahavat Yisrael. God wanted people with a previous record, a record of suffering for one's brothers, a record of placing one's personal welfare secondary to that of one's people's. How sweet it is to read it again and again. This midrash about the Jewish policeman. After all, we are so familiar with claims of the soldiers and the policemen in Israel today. I'm just a small cog in a big machine. I'm following orders. But this is not what Jewish policemen did to their brothers in Egypt. The policemen saw the illegality and immorality in a cruel Egyptian decree and refused the order. It is important to note that the Mesirat Nefesh, the self-sacrifice for the Jewish people, is not necessarily the readiness to die for them. Sometimes it may mean the readiness to be hated for your actions, the willingness to sit in jail for your people, or be ostracized by the establishment. Such leadership certainly stands in stark contrast of the self-indulgent politicians of today, but know that only when such an alternative leadership sprouts will Am Yisrael be redeemed. And this again is the writings of Binyamin Zeev Kahane, of blessed memory. May he and his father and his wife Talia's blood be avenged. I want to thank you. That's it on the Binyamin portion of the Parsha. I will also mention this week that we did also see in this Parsha that Miriam was stricken with leprosy. And this is actually one of the 6 remembrances we say in the morning at the end of our prayer service. One of the remembrances is the fact to remember Miriam. Now Miriam actually was sticking up for Zipporah, who was Moses' wife, because Zipporah had taken confidence to Miriam that Moshe had, of course, achieved a higher level of holiness and was basically not continuing marital relations. So Miriam really, in a way to help her sister-in-law, came and approached her brother Moshe and also with Aaron. So they spoke directly with Moshe, did Aaron and Miriam. And they really didn't understand. It was really not that Miriam was trying to speak negatively about her brother, but her brother was so humble. Moses was so humble that Miriam and Aaron thought that Moses was on the same level as them as far as prophecy. Because Moses was a prophet, also was Miriam and Aaron were prophets of the Jewish people. But Moses was on such a higher level, it was unbelievable the level that he was on. God spoke to him face to face. Miriam and Aaron didn't realize this, and that was the reason really why he had to keep pure all the time, is he never knew when God would have to talk to him, and by the fact that God would have to talk to him, he would have to remain pure. So what Hashem did is he actually called Moshe into the tent of meeting and had Aaron and Miriam outside and spoke to Aaron and Miriam outside. In other words, it would almost be like if a king had one of his courtiers in his court and needed to speak to his family, maybe one of the princes or something like that, rather than asking the courtier who had come to leave for a little while, the king actually removed himself to one of his chambers and spoke to the family members. So this is why Hashem left Moses in the tent of meeting and spoke with Aaron and Miriam outside. Of course, Miriam was stricken with leprosy, which she had to actually suffer for a week, and then was cured, and then was cleansed for a week, and then the people of Israel were allowed to move on. They actually stayed in honor of Miriam. They stayed and waited for her to heal from her leprosy before they moved on, and this was a measure for measure, because when Miriam was a young child, she actually waited by the riverbank to make sure that her brother Moses was actually picked up and taken out of the river by the Pharaoh's sister. So that is Binyamin's, of course, commentary, and then a little bit of just a little bit extra of what happened in the parsha this week. I want to thank you very much for your time. God bless, and have a great day.